I'm going to go over the universal laws, and throughout this video, one thing that I know for sure I'm going to repeat. I know that I'm going to repeat it because I'm not going to be able to help myself from repeating this. The universal laws are ordered. So there's 12 major universal laws, and it doesn't start at 5. It doesn't start at 10. It doesn't start at 12. It starts at 1. And 1 is actually the law of oneness. On this website, which is wellismo.com, wellismo.com. And I only pulled this website up because you know how it highlights and let you know that you've come to this website before. So you can't get to 5 without 1, 2, 3, or 4. You can't get to 10 without 1 through 9. And you can't get to 12 without 1 through 11. And it's not just 1, it's all. So the law of oneness means everything is connected. We're all connected. And I'm not going to go too far into talking about this. We're all connected, and I could say psychologically, I could give that example. The human mind operates a certain way. My mind operates just like any other human being mind. In that essence, we're all connected. Flesh and blood is made of the same material. In that way, we're all connected. We all communicate. Over 80% of communication is nonverbal, and that's anywhere you go in the world. You could go to a whole nother country with different customs, with different language, and still you can communicate. I'm lost. I'm sad. I'm happy. You know, so law of divine oneness. Law of vibration. It's like one of my favorite ones. So everything moves. Thoughts or movement. Thoughts are the precept to an act. But even with thoughts vibrate. So even though it's not an adamant thing, and you can't see the thing moving, which this isn't moving, I'm moving it. So thoughts or movement, and let's give an example of that. How many times have you interacted with someone, or even better, you haven't interacted with someone, and you know, like sometimes somebody will be watching you, and they are off to the side somewhere watching you, and you can feel somebody watching you, and when you turn around, you go, ooh, because they're actually watching you. So, I always do this. Now, this is a little spiritual warfare weapon. Look at people using your peripheral and pay attention to the way people are looking at you when you're not paying attention, or when they think you're not paying attention. And that will give you your micro expressions, I want to say microaggressions, but that's going to tell you more about what somebody feel about you than just paying attention, or when they think you're paying attention. So I just added that one in. I should have saved that for the next video. Law of attraction. Now this one is what we know, right? So everything has a unique vibration. I'm actually reading wellismo.com. I'm just skimming through it. So everything has a specific vibration. And I talked about this on that video that I said when I was working. I said, I'm going to go over the laws of universal laws. And this is the one that I was talking about. I described another one, but this is the one I specifically spoke about, because this is the one, this one coupled with a couple of other ones is what people have been taught, is what they have been taught to be as karma. And that's why I said karma itself isn't a real thing. But the concept of karma is an enmeshment of multiple universal laws. And this is when we first start to see it in law number 3, which is the law of vibration. And that's why I said, excuse me. That's why I said you have to vibrate on the level of what you want. And if you're subconsciously moving throughout life, you are attracting, if you know it or not, you are attracting what you vibrate. And we could say your vibration starts with your thoughts. So what you're thinking is what you attract. What you're thinking always comes out in your actions. So think about that. Law of correspondence. We're on number 4. As above, so below. So we saw that in a tomb text and in a papyri of the ancient Kemet. Ancient Egypt is technically not a thing, because Egypt itself is a rebrand and a renaming of the land that our ancestors called Kemet. So, but we know that from the tomb text. So before I even, well over a decade before I decided to even Google or look up the universal laws, I knew about the law of correspondence, as above, so below. And I want to say this. I didn't have to look up these laws or have to know these laws, because this is something that naturally happens. So in this analogy, I don't want to give this analogy, but they're showing pretty much, I don't even like the analogies they use here, but they're showing a tree. And this is one of the things that's often used to describe as above, so below. Because with a tree could teach you a lot about life, and it teach you a lot about yourself. So with a tree, and we think about this when we talk about shadow work, when we talk about healing, and we talk about connecting our shadow self to our higher self, our spiritual self. With a tree, the roots of a tree emulates the branches and leaves of a tree. And what I find that to be amazing in itself. But what I find to be even more amazing is tree branches will not grow further than the roots. So when we heal, we have to always, I don't want to say have to because it's a law. It's just the way it is. But we start with the shadow. We start with what's below the subconscious. And we heal and we grow there first, like any other living thing. If you are a plant person, which I am, you'll understand that about roots. So if you want to grow and flourish at maybe a specific goal in life, something of the material world, if you want to heal, if you want to grow in any area in the material physical world, you have to go below your subconsciously, below the conscious self, and actually address what's beneath, or what I see on the other side of the shadow self. And however far you're able to grow beneath the surface subconsciously, doing your what they call shadow work with your shadow self, however far you're able, or deep you're able to grow there, correspondently. And it is called the law of correspondence. I didn't even do that on purpose. Correspondently, that's how far you'll grow in the physical world, in the material world. And I said this, but I didn't say this initially. Also, the depth of the roots of the tree also determines the height of the tree. As above, so below. And also, to go back to what I was saying about micro expressions, also, if you ever heard this, there is no secret of the mind that the actions does not reveal. Number 5, the law of action. So we want to put things into action, right? We want something to manifest in life. And that's when things go from being a thought to an action. That's when things go from being a plan and to actually manifesting. So I want to not so much stop here, but I want to make a point. There's something that was let me do a side note, because something that they have written here. I'm just skimming through this stuff as I'm talking. This is pretty much what I just read, is pretty much to sum up what I've been doing in my creative space. Let me let me read the whole paragraph. As nice as it would be to sit on your butt and meditate things into reality, it doesn't work that way. While the vibrational aspect is a big piece of the puzzle, for actual results, inspire actions is required. The key word here is inspired action, the thought. Inspired actions are actions that are aligned with the things you're truly passionate about. You'll know because the work should be challenging yet enjoyable, rather than feel like struggle that is met with frustration and anxiety. And that's what that caught my attention, because that's what me taking a break as an artist and me realigning my thoughts so I could realign what I actually physically create. And anytime when I start to feel like it's struggle, frustration, and anxiety, and that happens a lot because I have all these projects, and how do I know which project to address or which project to start working on? I start working on the project that gives me least resistance. I start to work on projects that does not feel like a struggle. Rather, I wait until it no longer feels like a struggle to start a project, and then I start a project. And that's what healing has done for me, and that was a major part of why I wanted to heal, because my art process is more about me than anything. So I said I wanted to take a break right here because it pretty much just proves what I was saying about ordered. And these things are ordered. And the first five, really the first four, is something more in the mental space. And five is when that mental space turns into manifestation, when thought turns into manifestation. So we have the law of divine oneness, and think of it from the perspective of, if you want to accomplish a goal, if you want to attain something in life, let's just say if you want to make a profit in your, I'm an artist. Let's just say I want to make money from my art. I have to understand that there is a connection between my thoughts and the actions required and the results and outcome that I get. So to start working on and to start the process of making money from my art, it starts with my intent and me putting out the intent and me understanding that there's a connection between what I'm thinking and actually the actions that I have to make, the actions, the things I have to do to attain said goal. So I have to understand that there's a oneness between what I want and what's going on inside me, the way I'm thinking and feeling about it. Then there's a law of vibration. My thoughts create a vibration. It's a unique, specific vibration for specific thoughts. And I'm going to come back to that a little later. And to vibrate, the law of attraction is 3. The things that I want, I have to vibrate on that same, be on that same vibration. My thoughts have to be on that same vibration. My intent have to be on the same vibration of the things I want. The law of correspondence, to understand one thing corresponds to the next. The things that I'm thinking, the things that's going on internally with me is going to give me some results. Either it's intentionally or not intentional, but regardless, I don't have to know any of this, but to know that whatever I'm thinking, whatever my intentions are, whatever I focus on is corresponding, that deep down in my subconscious is corresponding to the things that's manifesting in the physical realm. So that's why I said, and also from psychology, a psychological perspective and stuff like that, to be in a present state of mind is to pay attention to our actions. So I'm always paying attention to my actions, or not always. I don't think that's not even really possible, but I'm often paying attention to my actions, and because most of the time, over 80% of the time, we're operating subconsciously. Just like over 80% of the time, communication is nonverbal. So I'm paying attention to my thoughts. I'm even paying attention to what happens when I drift off, which, counseling is a great aid for that. So when I see my physical actions, or even when I disassociate, meaning when I am no longer in the present state of mind, and I did what get lost in my mental space. So it's beyond just subconsciously operating. It becomes a thing of you're subconsciously trapped. So you have to, I don't like saying have to, but it's best to learn techniques to help you bring yourself into the present and focus. And that's a good thing that counseling and therapy, you should get tools to do that. So the law of correspondence. So I know that when I see myself doing some things, when I see myself doing things that are not in alignment with my core values, then that's an indication to me that something is off with my thoughts. And then that's when I go like the mechanic going under the hood of the car, and I go under the hood of my mind and go see what's going on, because subconsciously is manifesting through my actions that something needs to be addressed mentally with me. And the law of action, that's why I was saying I pay attention to my actions to make sure that my actions are in alignment with what I want, my intentions and my thought. Okay. There's something else I wanted to say, but it just escaped me. The law of cause and effect. Now, this is when it's not the same as the other ones, but they're ordered. So they all are linked together. So this is the one where people describe this as karma. You reap what you sow. What goes around comes around, and stuff like that. And people usually think of that in relation to other people, or in relation to good or bad, right or wrong in that. And that's not really truly what cause and effect is. The cause and effect is My actions produced a certain effect. What was the cause of my action? It goes back to law 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Something that I was thinking, where I put my attention, where I put my focus, my intentions, intentions, it causes a result. And you don't see that manifest until you get to law 5, which is action. The action comes first. And you don't know what the cause and effect is until you actually made that action. And then you can see what was the effect of that cause. So some people say you reap what you sow. What goes around comes around. And that's a very emotionally immature way to think of it. But we're coming out of that phase. We're now in the age of Aquarius, and we're expanding global consciousness. We're growing as a people. So as we grow and we learn, we understand that it goes deeper than you reap what you sow. What goes around comes around, stuff like that. And I don't like using those analogies because it starts to sound more like a boomerang effect. It starts to sound more like you're starting at law 5. You throw the boomerang, and then the boomerang is a physical thing. You do something, let's say you do something towards a person, and you get some type of punishment. That's the way some people think of it, and that's not what it is. So that's why I don't like using the terminology, you reap what you sow, what goes around comes around, because that's not really what it is. And by rule, remember my last video when I talk about rules are not true all the time. They're true most of the time. So there's also always an exception to the rule. So it's not a law because there's always an exception. It's not true all the time. So I don't like the you reap what you sow, what goes around comes around terminology, because under that terminology, you're starting at law 5. And remember, the laws are ordered. So they start off with your connection and understanding that you, especially mentally, are connected to things and everything living around you and things that's far away from you and you don't understand. And so I can't remember what type of quantum physics. I don't want to go there. I'm going too far. But cause and effect is, once you've went through the whole process of understanding that your thoughts and you spiritually, you are connected to everything living, and that means that you specifically, you vibrate, and all it starts with a thought. And the Paparite, the ancient Kemet tomb text teaches us this, that life starts with a thought. Everything starts with a thought. So we're connected to everything living. And that's something that some of us, we feel that, and we have proof and evidence. We know this. So just by the thoughts that we have and the type of individual we are spiritually, our spiritual makeup, we vibrate, meaning we move a certain way. Now, our thinking can be affected by things of the physical world. So when we vibrate, we're going to attract things on that vibration. I want to go in between 2 and 3. Paradigms. The paradigm that we are in, the reality we're in, it is between the law of vibration and the law of attraction. When we think a certain way and our thoughts are either limited or expanded, we attract the things that are within that vibrational pool. So I'm trying not to pull out paper and make charts and stuff like that. But think of, let's use my little stylus. This is the paradigm. This is a paradigm. And this is represent a certain type of thought. We cannot operate. We can only operate, how about this, from this point to that point. But there's a whole room, a whole house, a whole neighborhood, a whole city, a whole state, a whole country, a whole world, a whole planet, a whole solar system, a whole universe, multiple universes outside of this one little area. So to shift a paradigm, you have to start off with your thoughts. You have to start off with your vibration. Then we have the law of correspondence. We talked about that, as above, so below. The law of action, the things that we physically do, the actions we take as a result of our thoughts, our vibration, and then the law of cause and effect. And to me, cause and effect is more in line of, because this is a paradigm, and because it's, let's say, call this 10 and let's call this negative 10, as above, so below. We can only manifest things from positive 10 to negative 11. We can't attain anything at positive 10, positive 11, positive 12, positive. We can't, we don't even know anything exists outside of that consciously, subconsciously. So a lot of times, and that's what's the danger of operating from your lower faculties. A lot of times, especially when we're in survival mode, we're trying not to go any lower than a negative 10. And that fear of, let's say, the fear of making mistakes, the fear of losing, the fear of falling, the fear of all that other stuff, because you are scared to go below 10 because that's doing bad, good and bad. That's why I try to stay away from that type of thinking. Then just by you being limited to a negative 10, you're also limited to not being able to go above a positive 10. So this is the paradigm. You are vibrating, you are bouncing in between negative 10, positive 10, negative 10, positive 10. So the cause and effect would be that bouncing from negative 10 to positive, that bounce. The law of compensation. That's what do we gain from that paradigm? What do we gain from those thoughts? What do we gain from that vibration? What do we gain from those actions? What's available to us? And I talk about this a lot in spiritual warfare, that when you have access to your higher faculties, you have access to things that correspond in the material world. You have access to abundance. And abundance could be financial. It could be relationship-wise. It could be your health-wise. So the compensation, and definitely I start with my health, with my thoughts, because that's pretty much where it starts at. So it's the compensation. What are you able to attain with that vibration you're on, with that inside this paradigm? And that's what I was saying about, that's a whole nother thing. But some of us, certain things attract to some of us. And typically in a healthy situation, people who know that you have certain things attract to you, and they could stand next to you and they can benefit from being in the orbit or sphere of your energy. And it's really, you have a paradigm and you see outside the paradigm that they're in, so you have more access to things that they may have. And that becomes dangerous when you have people who, what we call clout chasers. You have people who don't have good intentions for you, and people who want to misuse that aspect of you. Not just use it, because when people tend to use you or use that part of you, there is also a corresponding compensation that they are hopefully not trying to harm you. They want what's best for you. They're going to help you win. They're not going to go out their way to make you lose, because they understand that any negative effect you have, or a negative effect on you, anything that traps you in the paradigm, because some people want to trap you in the paradigm, they understand that also limits, or they no longer have access to compensate from things outside of that paradigm that they don't have access to. Law of perpetual transmutation of energy. Now, they're all ordered. Keep in mind, these are all ordered. We cannot transmute without the thought. We cannot transmute, the thought, the oneness, knowing that everything is connected. You have to understand that not have to, but to understand everything is connected, because you don't have to understand it for it to be true. Everything is connected. So whatever your vibration is, going back to our negative 10, positive 10, because everything is connected. It could be things nowhere physically around you, or things that's not even of the physical realm. You have access to it because of your vibration. So what this one was again, the law of perpetual transmission of energy. So you can actually, the energy of your thoughts, the energy of your thoughts and your actions and all the stuff within the universal law 1 through 7, you can take that same energy and you can now project that energy and transform that energy in another form to attain a different attain something different than the energy and the form it is. This one says energy flows where attention goes. I'm just reading it. Okay. They were saying something about you can transmute negative fives first into neutral ones and then to a happier territory. So it's pretty much talking about the paradigm, positive 10, negative 10, and pretty much, I don't know what they're talking about, but pretty much from negative 10 to positive 10, you bouncing up and down that paradigm or across that paradigm. Law of relativity. Everything is relative. Everything is relative to you and your thoughts. The results you get, either from people or in life, is relative to your vibration, relative to your thoughts, relative to your actions, relative to your ability to transmute that energy, negative, positive, positive, negative, your ability to transmute that energy. So everything is relative to you. See, they're all ordered. There would be no relativity if there was no oneness, which that has nothing to do with us. We're just a part of this oneness. That's nothing that we're actually doing. The vibration really is nothing that we're really doing. That's just who we are. Without the whatever inside that paradigm, however you vibrate from negative 10 to positive 10. You're only going to be able to attract anything within that paradigm. Now, you could be stuck from 0 to negative 10 and be stuck in your lower faculties, or you could be stuck from 0 to positive 10 and stuck in your positive faculties, and either way, you're unbalanced. And that's another thing when people give this spiritual type guru stuff and they try to say just be in a positive state of mind and fake positivity and stuff like that. And fake positivity is just as toxic as negativity. You can't just be all positive. You can, but you're not going to accomplish much. Your energy field is going to be very limited by doing that. And that does go back to, now I do understand what they mean by transmutation, because that does affect, like if you're from 0 to negative 10, you can also transmute from 0 to positive 10. Or if you're from 0 to positive 10, you could transmute from 0 to negative 10. And with that, I transmute a lot because sometimes I'm in my lower faculties. I'm in my lower nature. I'm in those lower spaces. That's why I be saying and using an analogy about I frequent hell often. So I know that I have access to a whole paradigm, and my paradigm is not limited to negative 10, positive 10. Law of polarity. See how they're all ordered. A pole. This is one pole. This is another pole. This is the negative pole. This is the positive pole. And what tends to happen is when you don't have control or you don't understand how your thoughts and your vibration, your actions affect your life, and how you don't have to know these laws. You can live life without, I've just pulled this up probably 4 years ago is the first time I actually even decided to read on the universal laws, and I've been know about them. But it doesn't, me reading this doesn't affect what I know. I just pulled it up for, I'm gonna be real with you, to explain the way the mind operates. I was running a live feed, and I was trying to explain to a group of people who was watching the live feed, and I was trying to explain to them how thoughts work, and I pulled up the universal laws to show that we're governed. It's not no do as thou will. It's not just doing what you want to do. It's not you over here doing your whole thing. No. So the law of polarity. You're on one, you could experience one pole or the next. You could experience one extreme to the next. And that's what's really important about the transmutation, because if you know how to transmute, you'll know that you don't have to be stuck on positive pole or negative pole. You could bounce in between. And the reason why I'm not reading this stuff on here, because I don't like where they're going with some of this stuff. So it's wellismo.com, wellismo.com, or you could just look up 12 universal laws. The law of rhythm. So I always think of life in terms of a wave. You could think of like in mathematics when you're plotting in, I don't want to say energy, but let's go back to Aristotle. So rhythm. There's a rhythm. Let's just say you're in the paradigm of -10, +10. And that becomes a rhythm that sometimes for a certain time you may be operating from -10 to -5. Or you may be operating from -5 to 0. And then you might go back down to all the way down to the -10. And then you might be operating from -10 to 0. And you're just going, it's just up and down, up and down, up and down. And that's what happens when you don't understand that you can actually transmute that energy instead of being stuck between 0 and -10, or even +10 and 0, because you're still not getting the full experience. You're still limiting yourself, positive or negative. But that's on you. You have this your life. So the rhythm is the frequency. How often, the way you're bouncing between your paradigm. And then there's the law of gender. Now, the law of gender, we've been taught that gender is like a woman, man, and stuff like that. But pretty much it's feminine energy and masculine energy. And that's things that it cannot be refuted. Remember, all this is ordered. Okay, so I'm just looking at feminine energy versus masculine energy. It's just to give me a guide. So feminine energy is generally associated with intuition, creativity, nurturing, and receptivity, while masculine energy is linked to action, structure, ambition, and assertiveness. And that's why transmuting is important. And sometimes you have to be in the space of intuition, creativity, and you have to be in the, I don't want to say what I was thinking. But anyway, and then sometimes you have to be into that action, that structure. You have to be on that other pole. And that's why the transmutation as important, and it's important to have access and to be able to use both feminine and masculine energy. And those are the 12 laws, universal laws, and they all go in order. And it starts off with, even before the thought. And the ancient tomb text and the papyri from ancient Kemet, it says I did some art about this. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, I can't think of it. My mind, but it was pretty much saying there was just this existence like a body of water. Let's just talk about dark matter and space. It was just this life. Before life even started, it was just that. I can't think of the primal waters. And that's the way it's described. And it started off just like, even if you could use water or air as an example. So it's just like, it was just calmness. It was just existence. And as the ancestors have recorded, life started with a thought. And when that thought, boom, when that thought sparked, it created, which I call trauma, it created that vibration. But the space, the realm, all this stuff exists in, which is universal oneness. That's why everything is connected. So it may start off with our thoughts, but to us, nothing really starts off until we actually move in it. We actually make a physical action because we're in a paradigm of a physical realm. So to us, our conscious mind doesn't really take effect until law 5, the law of action. But before there was even a vibration of the thought or all this attract. And I don't want to go into quantum physics, but when you break a molecule apart, or you break some element apart, and there's the polarity, there's a negative pole, positive pole, and one pole might get flown way over here on the far reaches of the universe, and one pole may get flown way over here in the far reaches of the universe in the other direction. There's still a connectivity to those two halves. And you know, you know about the yin and the yang and stuff like that, but that's even with us, as above so below, from the mental to the physical. So there's a connection between our mental and our physical, and your spirit is not in your body. Your body is a manifestation in a physical aspect and creation of the mental, the spirit. So there's no way your body could house a spirit. You don't have a spirit. You are a spirit. And people tend to give up all their powers and all their rights by taking on the characteristics of certain spirits. You take on the characteristics of certain spirits, you can only get whatever's in range of the paradigm of that spirit, that the way you think.